Okay. So, so Bekitzer, right. So like one of the main highlights, it was a lot of great things. A lot of great things happen. Yeshiva, we sponsored a sukkah. We sponsored a sukkah and shalom, 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 shalom. So just recapping a few stories Otino was asking me about sukkahs. So one of the big ideas was so we sponsored a sukkah. It was with um a guy named because where we live at, we didn't have space for a sukkah, so we built it across the street. We more funded it more than anything. So the yeshiva, we had our sukkah. I wish I would have got pictures, but it was like across the street, and every time I went over there, it was just like a whole thing going on. Anyways, the idea. So we had the sukkah, had a lot of guests coming through. Basically we had the neighborhood on lockdown. But the last day of Sukkot, we had a daytime meal, Shmini Atzeres, and so I'm there. There's a bunch of people there, a lot of people, mostly really young people, like a lot of people in their 20s, mostly girls actually. I don't know how it worked out that way, but it is what it is. But anyway, so we're all there, and speaking this, I've been leading all the events, everything, and so I started talking about my story a little bit, and talking about me at the Kabbalah Center, this whole thing, right? And then I'm talking about directly sitting across from me. This girl out of nowhere says, "My family started the Kabbalah Center." And I look over at her, and I'm like, "Oh my God, that's Yehuda's daughter." So Yehuda Berg's daughter is sitting in my sukkah. with, her, the Ralph Berg's granddaughter is sitting in my sukkah, bro, right? So at this point, we're both like, because I remember when she was born as a baby. I never met her, but I did see her with pictures with Yehuda, on his like Instagram, whatever. So I just like it once it clicked, it clicked. You know what I'm saying? And anyways, so I'm sitting there and like, what are the chances of this? And it's really the first sukkah like I really just like totally like was hosting for a community, similar to like Rosh Hashanah. And anyway, so yeah, so she's just sitting there, and so I just go on this whole thing talking about her dad and experiences and how much they have to do with the fact. Now, one of the things that really struck me about it was like, I mean, obviously there's so many levels around this, right? And it was funny too. She's telling me that yeah, Yehuda's moving back. I already knew that, but I didn't know like what the story was, whatever. But he has two daughters that live out here, so they're all going to move in together. So, anyways, so that's that story, right? And so obviously that's the whole thing. We're talking about the grandfather and this. I mean, the grandfather being the Rob Burke, right? And just everyone there's mouth was just dropped, and it was just another simanim about how great this year is going to be for all of us, right? There's so many powerhouses and so many forces of strength that are coming into play. This is big stuff, right? So anyway, so yeah, so that was a big concept. Um, Probably the biggest idea. I think I talked about this before. was I did Yom Kippur on the Temple Mount. Right, it was like probably like 300 something people there. It was like unbelievable. And you gotta realize it's so significant because when I first went to Temple Mount, which was like probably like 2, 3 years ago now, like you couldn't even bow up there, right? And so since there's like a new head of security, um, Itamar Ben Gavir, he changed the policies up there, and this is big stuff here in Israel because the Jews are back praying on the Temple Mount after 2,000 years. You know what I'm saying? Like that's like really what's happening right now. You know what I mean? It's like I mean, because we're living it in real life, and it's day to day, and this little change happens, that change happens. But like if you just sit back and you look at it in context, what's being experienced right now in Israel has not happened, right? Because not only that, like this whole thing. I mean, Trump's speech. I don't know if you guys saw it. I'm not like a person who really like listens to a lot of political speeches, you know what I mean? But man, the stuff Trump was dropping. I mean, he was dropping so many levels of. I mean, God was using him as a channel on so many levels, and it was just powerful. It rocked, the whole country. The words that he was saying, the things that were happening. Um, so all these changes are happening, and you have to realize, like, Israel has air dominance over Syria, over Lebanon, over Yemen, over Iran, right? Israel's going into partnership with the Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain. This is the wealth of the Middle East. We're all going in partnership together, right? So this is like a new era. Will there be hiccups, these types of things? Yes. Is it still, Hamas still, aspects of them still, exist. They're gonna allow them to leave, but they have to disarm. But anyways, but the point is just saying that all these things are happening, right? And it's a new era for Israel because it's like you understand. Like I mean, obviously, like I said, there's the challenges are not going to go away until Mashiach is here, right? Or reveals itself at least, right? But the point is just saying that with all this that's going on, with all this that's going on, we just have to sit back. But it was a big deal. Now today was also a very big day for me because today, I mean, yeah, whatever. It was I led um, prayers on the Temple Mount this morning. Like Amida, that type of thing, but it was just like a massive level. You know what I mean? To just be like, I mean, I pray all the time. Usually have someone leading the prayer, whatever. But today was me, right? So that was just like a big concept, and it's like what's going on? I'm praying on the Temple Mount, on the eastern part, not the western part, like not the western wall, which is like we never prayed on the western side. You know what I mean? That was we're only there because the Turks and the Ottoman, they only let us come to a little small part as Jews, because they took over. So that's where the Western Wall comes from. And even that wall is an expanded wall that came. Anyways, so it's a big story. It's a big story. But nevertheless, as Lachaim G would say, Ani Po, right? So I'm here. So I'm just dealing with us in real time. But it was just huge, like the Rob Burks granddaughter sitting right in front of me. Like she's just like with a bunch of girls that, well, I know of me, you know what I mean? The type of thing. And it was just like, I'm a rabbi, you know what I mean? And I'm teaching and she's there. Like, could I have ever imagined, like when I first came to Kabbalah Center, like, yeah, like 15 years later, even longer than that now, right? Oh my God, that's so much longer. Like 20 years later, yeah, like 20 years later, you're going to be giving a class in Sukkah as a rabbi in Jerusalem, in Nakalot, and the Rothberg's granddaughter is going to be there listening to you. And like in giving her like invigoration about like who her family, because she didn't really grow up with the Rob, right? She was a young baby, right? She told me like she spent time with them, that, but he died when she was like 7, 8 years old. He passed away. He's here with us now, in this neshama, but obviously, right? And so, and it was funny too. The guy, they were over here like kind of like preparing the food to take it over to the sukkah in the morning. And he's like, "Yeah, I got a bunch of girls coming." I was like, "All right, cool." He said, "Yeah, they're from LA." And I'm like, "Okay, cool." You know what I mean? I was like, I haven't been to LA so long. Who knows me there anymore? I'm a legend. But so anyway, so yeah, so that was a really, really, really crazy experience in the davening. But it's just the whole thing has just been like a great ride. And I really think most of it has to do with a lot of the learning that we're doing because like we're just digging in every day, we're just digging in every day, and very few people are holding like this, you know what I mean? Like very few people are learning Kabbalah at this level on this daily basis and still, sharing, teaching, giving tzedakah, the yeshiva, like a lot of the times you guys people send donations and support those type of things. It's great, but a lot of that's like going to families and to help people. You know what I mean? Like just people come to me. I'm not a community rabbi here, but it's turning into that. Like I'm inspecting people's sukkah. They're coming over. Can you look at our sukkah? I'm like, bro, come on. Like what's going on? Right? Because I'm used to living in communities where I was like just becoming a rabbi. No one even knew who I was, and the places that I lived were very religious. And so like everyone's a rabbi, you know what I'm saying? Like everyone's learning somewhere, everyone's some type of thing. So that's the environment I was in. So whatever, I didn't think anything of it. But now over here, because I'm throwing so many events and this and this type of thing in this place, the classes and everything, it's like people come, they need help. People have families, they have a lot of kids, 6, 7, 8, 9 kids, you know what I mean? So just always know that during the holidays and these times, people, coming for help. And a lot of times it's people that would be considered minorities in the Jewish community, meaning like they're ethnic or they're converted or this, and they don't really have like such ties, intimate ties with their rabbi because they're just relatively new to communities or whatever. They're kind of like just haven't made that relationship with any particular person. A lot of times the relationships come through history. People known each other. Oh, we went to yeshiva together. Oh, we went to school together. Oh, we traveled to Israel together. Oh, we did this or, you know what I mean? These things take time. You build relationships, but it comes with time, but it's doable. You know what I mean? It's a very doable thing. But at the same time, some people who already kind of like have established families, it's a little bit different, right? Because like for me, like even though like, I would be considered like a person that's like older. I'm not like a 20-year-old, right? Still, I kind of came in like that, meaning that like because I went to yeshiva and I really was in that system and like integrated into Israel in that way. You know what I mean? Like I just didn't come like, okay, hey, I'm moving to Israel, I'm renting an apartment, I'm gonna get a job, maybe I'll learn to, whatever. My guy's horn's annoying. But why though? Like why the horn has to do, like why does he have to be on this? All right. Anyway, I don't even know what that was. Anyways, but the point is just saying that when I came to Israel, it was like because I came through the yeshiva system, meaning that when I came here, I had a particular destination place. I was able to build community because I'm in school with a bunch of other people, rabbis, and then they have this whole system like where they would set up Shabbat meals for us every week in the community, right? So like every week you're going to a different house, meeting a different family, and this went on for years. And so you build relationships with people and you get comfortable living here. You get comfortable with the streets and this and the sun and this, but and at the same time you're learning, and then you meet more people. You know what I mean? So it happens. And I was a speaker. I was given permission by the yeshiva to speak because people asked me to speak, and so I had to get permission to go out publicly, become a speaker when I was still in yeshiva, and so that really opened up a whole nother world for me, which is like now I'm at with events and I'm meeting all types of people. So it was just been a really like. I mean, obviously, there's being away from home and this and finances and all these things. It has its own thing. It's not like a simple thing living in any foreign country. And Israel is a very expensive place, especially Jerusalem is not that different from LA. But in some regards. But either way, the point is just saying, so I'm very integrated into these environments in the community, personality wise, and even just time spent, right? So a lot of people come and they need support, this, blah, 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 because of those, because I could bridge those two worlds, in a lot of ways. Like even like a guy like Nassim Black, like he's a very like famous guy, but he's always been famous. You know what I mean? Like he came into the Jewish world and he just was like big songs and those type of things. But he wasn't necessarily like a yeshiva guy. He didn't have to go through, dating and getting engaged and married and all, you know what I mean? Like he didn't have to like go through that process. So it's a different relationship. You know what I mean? Like most of the guys who are rabbis, like that like are more than active right now. Most of those guys, I know them. You know what I mean? I learned with them. We chilled. Most of the guys I was roommates with are now rabbis working at places, around, around the world. I mean, not around the world, but around America mostly, in Israel, because they're English speaker type guys. But anyways, well, with all that being said, the holidays were very high level. Um, I realize it's very hard for me to pray in a synagogue now that I go to the Temple Mount a lot. It feels like a digression in a way. Like I feel like why am I not there? But sometimes just out of convenience, and energy, you know what I mean? Because you can't be too like wild about it. I don't, I mean, it's only like really, truthfully, like a 20 minute walk from my house. It sounds crazy, right? For me, from my house, from the Temple, it's like a 20-minute walk, a little bit uphill. I walked it today. I walked it this morning. It's funny. So I went to this meal and I met this girl at this meal, and she just really blew me away. I was at this sukkah. It was Sukkot on Shabbos, Shabbat day. Anyway, so I got invited to this guy, or I invited myself because the meal that I was going to go to was you know, it's a good friend, very close friend of mine. His girlfriend, dating, fiance. I'm not sure exactly what they are, but anyway, she was supposed to do something. Anyway, it didn't happen. So I call this guy that I know, and I want to build a relationship with him. Actually, when I took the picture of when I was with Mike Huckabee, it was he the gentleman that I was by. He's the one who took the picture, and was involved in the whole event, whatever. He's a player out here. Anyway, so I just called him and said, "Hey, my plans went out. What's up?" You know what I mean? Like I just sent him a message. He's like, "Yeah, you can come over tomorrow daytime." Blah blah blah. Anyways, so I go to this meal. I wasn't even supposed to be there, and so this girl's there, and like she's I don't know everything about her, but she grew up religious, whatever. But she's telling this story about like, and they brought it up. Like so, long story short, so she goes every morning 2, 3 in the morning to the old city, in the old city where the Temple Mount is and the whole thing. And she goes there and prays every morning. And she goes every single day. And she's been doing it for the last 10 years. And I'm like, bro, like this is crazy. Like this is like unbelievable strength. Anyways, the point is saying that like, so I had this like, I mean, I'm telling you, like I've had crazy. I told Otino about this. Like this lady comes yelling at me, like I'm like speaking at this thing, and some lady's like, "Yeah, I need to talk to you." This like old lady, right? She comes to me, she's like, "Yeah, I need to talk to you," and she like takes me like outside the sukkah, and I go outside because I'm just stopped by a friend's house. She's like, "I know who you are," and I'm like, "Oh my God, like what's going on?" She's like, "You're a black Hebrew Israelite," and blah 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 blah, and I'm like, "Whoa, like where's this coming from?" Blah 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 blah. This whole thing. And then she starts getting loud and and I'm outside at this point, like nobody's there. And I'm like, and the guy who's is his house, his name's Rockney. I'm like, Rockney, help. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I try to move and she like stands in front. I'm telling you, this is like a old lady and she was really tall. I'm just saying, this is like I'm dealing with crazy stuff out here. Like it's just, anyways. Because or anyway, the point is just saying that I had them deal with it in the community. I was just like, bro, you need to talk to this lady, investigate, ask if she has any type of proof or anything or what she's claiming, these type of things, blah blah blah. Anyway, it was good. It's good because like at the end of the day, when people speak gossip about you, what it really does, it inspires people to investigate you. And when people investigate you, they learn about you and they even gain a much greater sense of like admiration and appreciation. So, I don't really like get upset about like people speaking Lashana. Like this guy, I was on this app. He's like, yeah, we're writing an article against you and this and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, what are you going to say? She said, wait, no, we're going to expose you, blah, 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 this whole thing. I'm like, all right, man, whatever. You know what I mean? One thing that I really appreciate, and we're going to go into Sugya. One of the things I appreciate, like now that I'm older, is that I never got like in any like trouble. You know what I mean? I never like got arrested or ever been sued or you know what I mean? Like this type of stuff. And I never thought about it. Like, you know what I mean? It was never something like I was trying to like avoid or anything. But I remember like years ago, I was doing this deal with MTV, right? And I had a show and we were negotiating and this and this whole thing. And so right in the end of the negotiation, they come back to my lawyer and they're like, hey, we want to do a background check on him and we want to make sure because, someone like did a reality show and someone got shot on a reality. It was like some crazy thing. This is like a long time ago. It was like 2011, 12 type thing. You know what I mean? It's a long time ago. Anyways, but the point is, why they want to do a background check? Not that I mean, I'm an executive producer. I'm not talent. You know what I'm saying? But what they were trying to do was gain leverage. You know what I'm saying? They wanted to make if I like got arrested or this or that or something like this, felony, God forbid. You know what I mean? That they could be like, oh, well, we don't know if we want to do business and we only feel comfortable doing it this way. And you know what I mean? Like this is the type of games they play, out there. But even now more so where I'm at and the visibility and everything. It's like, bro, like I get updates all the time from like classmates.com because someone is searching my profile. You know what I'm saying? So that means someone's looking me up, going on classmates.com and trying to match up whatever. Like say I say, oh, I grew up in Calabasas, I went to Calabasas. People are going on my thing from high school, and so they tell you because they want you to pay money. You know what I mean? So they always tell you about these like updates and sometimes they let you see it, and it's like random people that I don't even know. But anyways, I'm just going through that, just saying that even when I ran as a Republican for Congress, bro, with everyone just honking going crazy. It's like the day after holidays, people are leaving, because they travel to Jerusalem, people are going back. Anyways, even when I ran for Congress, like even that was a whole thing. Like me, my background, this whole thing, and it's like you can see why there's such an emphasis on like these like drug laws and this, because like you could be a kid, you could easily just get caught up like some people have some like marijuana or something else, and you're at a place or you're in a car or you're here or you know what I mean. Just anything happen, and now you have something in your record, and it's just like people they try to use that as leverage. Anyways, Baruch Hashem, we're here. Transparency is key, and not only that, I've been trained to have transparency, like even since a kid. You know what I mean? Like I've always been like raised to like see myself a certain way, see our family a certain way, to see the way we conduct ourselves a certain way. So it was never like, I had to like resist, deviant things. I mean, we did like childish stuff with girls and stuff like that, but never like we never thought about anything like criminal per se or, like that type of, because kids like sometimes they do stuff like get involved in scams and this and stuff. Anyways, it was never such a thing when we grew up. I mean, we had our other issues, right? But we're here now, and it's getting bigger. It's definitely getting bigger, and there's a lot of attention. And the reality is, and no one could teach you this either. You have to really like go through it. which is like at a certain point, you have to detach even from logic. Meaning that, like, yes, there's a logical framework. I'm sitting in a room. There's a door. There's trees outside. I mean, there's a logical framework, but there's a certain level of rationale, and this segues into our class. There's a certain level of rationale that perceives that we know why everything around us is working the way that it works. Right? Like, as much as we could talk about, like, we're learning Ramchal, right? We're learning about the light force of the creator, and how this light force of the creator matriculates into letters and divine names and created this composite of instructions that were later to be manifest through this frame called the Simsun in this dynamic, right? So that on one level you could say, like, okay, yeah, wow, that sounds amazing. That's crazy. Look at this concept. Wow. Wow, the light force. Wow, we just learned about Malchus and the process of Malchus. Wow, the whole thing. And logically, you could sit there and you could say, hey, you know what? That's really dope. Like, this is it makes so much sense. Like, it's like you get the missing verses to a song or something. You know what I mean? And you put those verses in, you're like, oh wow, the song sounds so much better. That's one level. That is a level, and that's more of a level than most people who never really get too far in life, right? Most people, they just want to, like, eat and sleep, like that rock level. But over here, we're saying that if we accept that everything is an emanation of Hashem's light, that means the only reason why it's functioning is because of Hashem's Ratzon. And there's a certain aspect of our personality, maybe you could call it ego, whatever, that perceives that we understand why the tree is in front of us, why our spouse is in front of it, why our spouse is not in front of us, why our kids are not, why the money's there, why the money is not there. All these things, we have this rationale. Oh, well, I did this, or this is what happened, or like I lost my phone. I was thinking in my head, okay, well, maybe I did this, or I didn't say this right, or maybe I did this over there. Blah, blah. I'm making these calculations because there's still an aspect of our intellect that perceives that we understand why the world around us is existing, right? And so because of that perception, we can go and make decisions where it's like, okay, well, some days, I want to do the right thing, and some days I don't necessarily want to do the right thing, right? And we do that because we perceive that the continuance of what's going on around us has something to do with us. Like, we know, right? I know why this happened. Even though we could say Baruch Hashem, think life, this Hashem, wow, wow. The thing is that all that's great, and it's better than the person who has no acknowledgement. But there's still a sense of false knowledge, which says that I know why this is happening, I know why this manifested, and then I know this dynamic. So if you accept that, like, that's not why reality works, right? Then the concept of Torah mitzvahs means something much different. Because if I don't know why it functions, but it does function, and I want to stay away from, pain and suffering, I want to be stay closer to pleasure, right? Then the system of thought, then the system of thought, then the system of thought that allows me to perceive that I know why things manifest, I kind of have to let that go. And that's what I'm saying. At a certain point, you have to accept that, like, well, you know what? I don't really know what the right thing is, and I don't really know what the wrong thing is, right? But I do know what I can do myself and how I govern myself and how I apply myself, right? And by applying myself and governing myself a certain way, I'm in line with Hashem's will, however way it manifests, right? I'm not saying, like, oh, because I do this, everything's going to be good and I'm going to have pleasure. Or if I don't do this, right, I'm going to have, you know, um, you know, bad things, type of a thing. I do this, good happens. I do this, bad. It's not about bad or good. It's about being in line with Hashem's will. Because Hashem may put you through a rainy season, but that rainy season was building something else. So you're going to complain during the rainy season? If you knew the rainy season was building you, right? If you knew the rainy season was building you, would you complain about it while you're going through it? But if you just saw the rainy schism as something that's different than what you wanted, right? Or what you think is good, then it's like, well, then it's like, then you're just living in your own ego, and you're not allowing Hashem to mature you and develop you and to to expand you, right? To expand your vessel, right? I mean, I went through difficulties. I could say, oh, but look, I do all these mitzvahs and this, and I teach. Well, why didn't this work out? Why didn't this relationship become? No, but that's not life. Life isn't, to say like, oh, why didn't this work or why did this work? The point of life is to experience it, right? To go in with good intentions, to pursue good, to pursue peace, to want to do the mitzvah, to make the connection to Hashem. And then there's a whole set of situations within that, right? Because that's what makes it a blessing, right? Because it's going to evolve you, as a person, right? The bracha evolves you. It's not like, it's conditional thing where it's like, I mean, obviously no one wants to experience pain. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a universal thing. But however, there's times in life when we experience pain and it's pleasure, right? Like working out. Like people work out and it's painful. It's arduous. Your body, your muscles, tissue, this whole thing. But you're getting somewhere, so you do it every day, right? And the thing about working out, when it's less of a strain on the body, means you want to increase the weight, right? You know what I mean? Like you're benching 115. Okay, oh my God, 115, blah, 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 blah. And then you get up to, this. Another thing that's interesting about this girl. So anyways, I don't know how to think about it. So anyways, so the girl that I was telling you about that wakes up early, whatever the whole thing. So I didn't want to even ask her name, right? Because I didn't, it was one of those like environments where it's like everyone's really very religious, very froom, and I don't know what the relationship with the girl is, with the family, and this, whatever. So I didn't want to be presumptuous and say, I didn't want to be presumptuous and say, oh, what's your name? Or that, you know what I mean? I didn't want to be like that. It wasn't that type of vibe. Anyways, long story short, after the holidays, this girl adds me on social media, right? So, anyways, so I look at her thing, right? I look at her thing, and and I don't know what to think about it. But I mean, like, she's at a shooting range. You know what I mean? Like, one picture is a shooting range, and I'm just like, okay, all right. I mean, she did mention defense, this type of thing, and then another one, she's like bench pressing. I mean, it wasn't like a lot of weight, but it's like a thing. Like to me, it's a thing. Like it's one thing to like go and work out at the gym, but it's another thing to take pictures of it. You know what I mean? It's like a very specific thing. So anyway, I don't know, just one thing. But the thing I thought about, like, I'm not kidding you. I know it's going to sound random, but I just, I know it's like we're having this conversation. So when that like crazy lady rolled up on me, I thought to myself, I was like, you know what? Whoever I marry has to be like tough, because there's so much coming at me. You know what I mean? Like so many different dynamics and this in the Jewish community, outside the Jewish community, this, blah, blah. And you're gonna have these kids and they're gonna have some type of ethnic component to them, right? Just by nature of the vast majority of the women I'm meeting they're not African American, right? And what can I do about it? I'm in a minority group. What do you want me to do? Right? I got to work with what's there. So I just think she has to be like a strong woman. And then on top of it, I'm a big personality. You know what I mean? And I'm much bigger personality now than even, than I was even in my prior. I mean, my energy is higher, this type of a thing. I'm more like in touch with like a deeper aspect of myself. And so um so I was thinking like I gotta like marry like someone like who really can like hold down the fort like and like like a certain type of personality. And that's like part of like this process of like getting to like really knowing yourself as you evolve, because it's like I didn't think about this before. Like I just, I was just like, Torah looks, what else you need? You know what I mean? So, environment, this, all that type of stuff. But now the stakes are higher in his life. All right, so let's go into it. But I just gotta keep you up to speed, like what's going on. You know what I mean? Like I have to because it's also Torah. It's also historical. Everything that we're doing is historical. It's being documented by lots of people, right? So this is all real stuff. All right. Any thoughts, reflections before we go forward while I bring this thing up? I know I went off a little bit, but hey, we're there.
Real got shame. I'll say a little something, Rob. It's interesting, how you were saying, it's like about transparency or whatever. And like, I won't go into details about myself per se, but like, it's always been interesting. Like, I've always kind of thought about my background, like, how does that play out? You know what I mean? Because like, for someone like yourself, it's very, I mean, for anyone, it's very important. But it's like, I always thought, like, Hashem, like, how's my background gonna be able to connect, like Torah wise, whatever. And I think like for myself, because I come from it's an intriguing background, like my life and then my adult life and all the things I've been through, like the level that I'll be able to connect with people. You know what I mean? Like I'm kind of more on the side of how can I say it? Like the undesirables in a way. You know what I mean? Like or like the kids to say like in the trenches. You know what I mean? So I can like a lot of my friends, a lot of people like the communities, a lot of people that I connect with, it's like they don't see a way out. You know what I mean? It's like, and I always use myself like, bro, if I'm here, like if I'm able to learn on the highest level with Sadiqim and able to take my life from one extreme to the next to here, bro, anybody can do it. You know what I mean? So I look at like, and I talked to Hashem about it a lot. Like, Hashem, how will I be able to get in front of anybody? You know what I'm saying? Because like you're saying, Rob, in terms of like if someone goes to the background and all these different things, like, bro, I can't speak on anything. But in reality, it's like, nah, you can connect on a whole different level as well. So my point is, it's like, everyone has their role to play. You know what I mean? It's like it's beautiful connection. Like just hearing you speak about that, it made me really it kind of inspired me to think about myself from that angle. Like, I have a role to play as well. Work out sharing.
Yeah, like, and on that point too, is it's like, it's like if you remember, like a while back, we were learning Or Chaim, and he was talking about Parsha. I think it was Ray A. He says, "Why does it say Ray A and not Reu? Why does he refer to himself as Anoki, right? In this whole thing." And so he was basically the Or Chaim was talking about self-esteem, right? And what real self-esteem is, because we live in a society, what you're saying is very important. We live in a society that denies the soul, right? I talk about it every day. We got to talk about it every day. They deny the soul, right? So the whole aspect of the virtue of man comes from his achievements, right? And so his achievements determine like what they understand, like his legacy, like his ability to be immortal and these sort of things. As for us, every every soul is immortal. You know what I mean? Every soul plays a role. Every spark of the creator in a way is immortal. You know what I mean? Is immortal because it all is going to return back to the Ein Sof, right? And so because of that, we live in a society that our self-esteem is built on how well we have adapted to the system that we're in. And so once you have a society that is based on that premise, you have no control over your identity. You know what I'm saying? Like you have no control over your identity, meaning that, well, if you went to this school, if you lived in that place, if your parents made this amount of money and the marketplace was like that, and you were in the, you know what I mean? Like in the timing and they got hired at this time or they got an whatever the situation is that makes up who you are, right? That that dynamic, right? That dynamic is um that those things are out of your control, but yet they determine how we see ourselves. So a guy, say he goes to jail, a guy gets a felony, a guy gets into a situation. I remember I had a friend of mine that when we were younger, he was like walking down the street or whatever, and they used to have like these newspaper boxes, right? Where you put like a quarter in, you get the newspaper out. And I think he kicked one of them. Like they did school and he was walking, he was just being, disorderly, whatever. Anyways, point is, Bekitzer, the point is just saying that he got in trouble for that. And that was like something that eventually got on his record, right? And people do a lot of things when they're young and this, and they're not thinking, and they're with friends and this and this type of thing. So the point is just saying that the mechanism that we live in is designed to shame people, right? That's why you create petty crimes. That's why you put drugs into community, because it's not just everyone's addicted to drugs. It's the culture around the drugs and your ability to demify the individuals for their participation in it one way or another, right? Because drugs create crime, right? Or illegal activities, right? Because the basis of drugs is illegal. So anyway, so my point is just to say that once we reverse that way of thinking and say, well, actually, my soul came into this world and there were a set of conditions that were set up ahead of me because in this particular lifetime, right? Like I was going to be susceptible to this, I was going to be susceptible to that, I was going to fall into this, I was going to fall into that, all these different things, right? That I was going to deal with based off of a set of conditions that had nothing to do with me. If I would have grown up in China, I would have had a different set of conditions, right? Or if I grew up in this environment, I have a different set of conditions. But this is a set of conditions that my neshama, in with the creator, said this is the best environment for me to correct myself, right? And when we look at the stories of all the prophets, all of them, like in Hollywood, would be called coming of age stories, right? Like people who were the last people, like, who thought Abraham and Sarah were going to do this? Who thought Noah was correct? Adam, his own wife didn't even listen to Joseph. All these people are people that were the kicked out, the this, the Vita Melechs, these types of things, right? And the Torah keeps emphasizing the story, right, of the person who's not this, or the unlikely character, the unlikely hero. It keeps reinforcing that because the Torah understands that the perception of reality that we're going to come into is going to make ourselves see ourselves in that way, no matter what, right? Like, look at it this way: like, there's 190 countries in the world, right? Only 18 of them have over $1 trillion GDP, gross domestic product, right? What they produce, these type of thing. Only 18 of them out of 190 that are recognized countries, right? African Americans have $1 trillion in buying power every year, which would make them the 19th largest country in the world. So what I'm saying is, if you perceive yourself as struggling and living in the ghetto, you could do that. But compared to the rest of the world, you're not, bro. Those Jordans, or that iPhone, whatever, that iPhone could feed a village. You know what I'm saying? So it's just saying that it's a perception that we all live with. I'm an A student. I'm a B student. Oh, I'm in gifted. Oh, I'm in what they call it, the slow class. I'm in uh, 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 I mean, I don't even know what the names they have for these things, right? So you get to shape people's perceptions, and it works because you get to create a workforce. This person perceives that he's a janitor. This person perceives they're a teacher. This person perceives they're a principal. This person perceives himself as a superintendent, right? So you need people to perceive themselves a certain way, so they go into. So my point to you is just saying that whatever perceptions you developed about yourself are not true, right? Even the greatest things you could think of yourself, they're not true. They're coming from a series of influences that really had very little to do with God, right? Even decision, right? The decisions that we made have very little to do with God, right? In our past life, right? And so if that's the case, I- those decisions really are not expressing me. It's just expressing a set of conditions that my natural biological and economic environment, all these things like led me to, right? I grew up in the suburbs, right? If I grew up in another community, maybe I would have been more likely to get involved in crime, right? You know what I'm saying? Maybe not. I don't know. I wasn't faced with the challenge. But the point is just saying human nature is human nature, right? And what's more important is the perception that I have of myself, knowing that it was created by a society that ignores the very thing that makes me alive, which is my neshama. Because that's the thing. If you see the world from the neshama, that means you live in the perfect reality, right? Like that means the amount of money that you have is the perfect amount of money you need in your pocket today, right? Whatever dilemmas you're dealing with is the exact dilemma you need to be dealing with. Because these dilemmas are designed specifically for you to correct your neshama. So you live in the perfect reality. You live in Garden of Eden. The only thing that stops us from perceiving that is the Nachash, right? The Nachash comes and whispers to us and says, "Oh, well, you're not the one. It's somebody else. You aren't successful. Look what you don't have." Right? I was just listening to J. Cole just a few minutes ago. I was playing it for a friend of mine, but that whole thing, like "Love Yours," that's the whole song. Is like, he's saying it doesn't matter whatever he's talking about that life he's living. He said it doesn't matter whatever girl you get, there's another girl who's better, or the clothes, the cars, is this. It's always something bigger. It's always something better. So the point is just saying the whole idea of Garden of Eden is knowing that we're living in the perfect reality every day and not listening to the Nachash that says, "Oh, well, you know what? You should have more. You should do this. Oh, you should already be married with 5 kids. Don't you hate your life? You don't have 5 kids. Don't you hate your life? What are you doing?" That's the Nachash. I'm exactly where Hashem wants me to be. And my job is to purify myself and to elevate myself and to connect myself to God's will. And we have different mechanisms on how we do it throughout the day. And stay on that path. Obviously, you have to pursue. You got to have effort, hastaglis. You have to make the effort. You got to do. You can't just sit around like in the corner and say, "Oh, everything's gonna happen." No, you got to go and put the work in. But that doesn't mean your work is making it happen. It's just another way to create a vessel. Okay. With all that great stuff being said, it's interesting point on this idea of residue, right? So this residue is a big idea, right? Because the Ramchal basically is teaching, you have this endless world, and then we go through the process how that those lights go through the letter process and the divine name process and the instruction process, and then you have this thing, the Simpson, right? And so the Simpson takes these limitless lights. It takes a few of them and puts them in this process of constriction, meaning like the light is no longer expressed as it was once before. It's in a frame of limitation, right? So the Ramchal refers to this as mishu, right? As mishu as residue, right? So residue. Well, what does it mean, residue? Meaning that the world of the Simsun is only the light that we see is only a residue of the light that like say for example the you see you see a particular animal, right? You see a particular animal, and the animal's walking down the street, or you see it at a zoo, and you're like, wow, look at this creature that Hashem created, right? So that creature that you see created, according to Ramchal's perspective, that animal is an expression of a divine name that is a combination of letters that are expressing a light from the endless world, right? So endless world, letters, divine names, Torah, Simsun, manifestation, right? Right. So that process, right? And so this residue that he's speaking of, this mishu, is this idea of that residue being only a limited expression of reality. And that's a very important concept, right? Because he's saying everything that we see in this world is only the residue of whatever we see, like other person, the sky, the tree, the moon, the stars, the whole thing. It's just a residue of what? An infinite light that went through this whole filtering process. And that reality is a very powerful concept for us in life, right? Because if we accept that it's only the residue, that means we cannot make an absolute judgment on anything. Again, it goes back to this idea of vulnerability with Hashem, right? The vulnerability with Hashem, meaning that I cannot say why reality is functioning the way that it is, but it is functioning, and I have an idea of how this light manifests. But why this particular light is manifesting at this moment? This, like, I know people who are in relationships, right? And they were just like, why is my partner flipping out? Why are they self-sabotaging? Why are they doing these crazy things that they can't come back on? Right? That's a particular light that that person was experiencing, right? But what's behind that light, he doesn't know. It could have been mercy. It could have been teaching and building certain faculties that are going to allow this person to be extremely successful in other relationships. But in that moment, all you see is loss. You just see like, oh my God, this isn't this, or anything in life. We lose people, this, all these different things. We're only seeing the residue. The full light of the situation is not, it's not clear. And it's not going to be. Hashem says, Lech Lecha. Okay, where do I go? You know what I'm saying? God comes to you and says, go and find yourself. Okay, so new, where would I go? So the point is just saying that this idea of residue is not just a concept we're learning in the text, it's a way of seeing reality. We're only seeing the residue of ourselves. Like what Otino's saying, bro, that's only the residue, right? And that residue could be, if you change you could, it's like it doesn't even exist. Like that's exactly in order to reveal the exact light to the exact people who's supposed to hear what you have to say. I used to say this all the time. Like I knew this girl, and she was really talented, beautiful girl, really smart. This whole thing. But she had a lot of emotional issues. She had a very traumatic upbringing and things like this. And then she got married, and a lot of these things started coming out, and it just became a whole thing. But the point is to say that even now, when I look back, because I know her, when I look back on her and the whole thing, and even now, she's like, the Rebbitzin of the future, because this is where all these girls are at. You know what I'm saying? Like they're all head cases. It's the whole generation. Like they're obsessed with mental health and this and self-diagnosing themselves off of TikTok and this is the generation. Okay. So anyway, so let's just keep going. So that's the residue, right? And I'll say this is the residue part. One of the things that hit me was I was reading, they're talking about, Simchat Torah, Shmini Atzeres, these times, we do a lot of dancing, right? There's a lot of dancing. So what's this concept of dancing? Like, where's the spirituality of dancing? And me growing up, as African American culture, dance is like a big part. It's been a big part of the cultural expression, part of the survival and tyranny, all these things, right? And so, um, um, so that so what's the spiritual concept? So there, because I hang out with a lot of the Chabad guys, and I like learning with them. I like learning Hasidus and Tanya. So this one guy was just learning, and I just was walking past him, and I heard him speaking on it. And he was like, so this is the okay, so this is the blah blah blah. He was just learning in the morning. I walked in the shul, I was too early. So, anyways, so I saw the guy later, and I asked him. I was like, "Hey, I heard you learning in the morning. You were talking about the," and so he explained it to me. And so the sages teach that the concept of dancing, especially on Shmini Atzeret Simchat Torah, is that the dancing lifts the lowest part of the human being, which is the bottom of their feet, and it lifts it up. But the lifting up is not just limited to the bottom of the feet, but it's also connected to the makshava, the thinking process of the man, right? And so when a person's dancing, they should have in mind that they're going to the level of malchut, their lowest level, and they're elevating it all the way to the highest aspects, which is our thinking process, our intellect. So the lowest part of us and our highest part of us are unified. And that's the inyan around dancing with the chassidut. So I heard that, and so the other day, a friend of mine was doing what they call a siyum. It was yesterday actually. He completed a part of the Zohar, right? And so he had people over, whatever, and so they were talking about the different parts of the soul, or the sphirot, what we're learning here. This idea of the sphirot, and this idea, of the different aspects of the soul and this, and they were talking about there's obviously the dirt on the bottom of someone's foot, is we want to clean it off, right? But there's another way of seeing that as something very holy. And so he was reading a part from the Zohar, and it was talking about, I think it was a Zohar. Okay, I know he was doing his completion of Zohar, but I don't know if he brought another source. But anyways, we learned with Rabbi Ashlag that there's a supernatural, like there's 613 parts of the soul. There's 600 which, within that soul is parsufim, and there's 613 parts. There's 613. The soul itself emanates a physical body, right? The physical body is an emanation of the soul, which has 613 parts, limbs and organs, right? 613. And then you have the Shekhinah, right? And so the Shekhinah itself, which is designed, the physical structure is designed like, in the frame of a body, the structure of it. And that's why every mitzvah corresponds to a different part of the body of the Shekhinah. We unify ourselves with the body of the Shekhinah. Every time we do specific mitzvahs, like now we're doing the mitzvah of learning Torah and speaking Torah and discussing Torah and contemplating Torah. So right now, our mouth, our thinking, our brains are all connected to the supernatural Shekhinah, mind, brain, and those types of things too. So every mitzvah we connect to the Shekhinah, and the Shekhinah is what we receive our light from, right? We receive our light from the Shekhinah in this dynamic, right? Okay. So with that being said, there's a supernatural body above, right? Now let's take this concept of the dirt of the feet, right? So if there's a supernatural body above, and we can understand that supernatural body as a dissemination of light, we can understand the dust on the feet in the same way as the residue, right? So the dust on the feet, right, is connected to the body, but it's only expressing, a very minute, limited expression of the body, and almost not the body, because the body is in a different mechanism than the residue, right? Because the body itself is connected to the Ein Sof. So the residue is the aspect of which is inside of the Simsun. So in that same way that the physical body of the Shekhinah, or the physical expression of the spiritual world being expressed in the Shekhinah, could be looked at in the same way as the dust of the feet, right? Meaning that this aspect is attached but very different. It plays a role, but it's only expressing in a very limited frame of that, right? And so when you think about it from that aspect, like the residue and the dust, of the feet, you think about the Nachash, right? And you think about the curse of the Nachash when Hashem says that you're going to eat from the dust of the earth. And then the sages say, wow, that's a horrible curse because there's an abundance of it, and it's easy to forget about Hashem. But if you read it based off of the way that we're learning the Ramchal, you could say that the dust of the feet and having that curse has the ability to only see materialism, to only crave materialism. And everything beyond the dust, you will never have a desire for, right? And that's the curse of the Nachash. All right. Okay, so I think we're good on that. Okay, so it says Alpha Pekin, Kol Mosheresh Shamelo Haya Lechol Le'Mas'ah Elaim Mekin. Okay, so this is part two. I think we did a resume. Okay, so another concept, and I think Otina appreciated this. He's introducing this idea of the sphere. We got to do a little bit of background. Not everyone was here for that class. But the point is saying, so there's this idea of the 10 sphirot, right? What is this idea of the 10 sphirot? Is basically saying that every aspect of residue, right, that exists in the Simsun has an umbilical cord that goes all the way back to the Ein Sof, right? I mean, we just talked about it. It's the obvious point, right? So that umbilical cord from everything that exists in this material, even the smallest grain of dust has an umbilical cord. Every microscopic, every atom, every molecule has an umbilical cord going back to Hashem, going back to the endless world, right? Which ultimately, leads us to Hashem, who's our beyond our logic, right? And so that's the dilemma that we're dealing with. So he calls this umbilical cord the cuff, right? The cuff, right? And the cuv, not cuff, but the cuv, Kav, the cuv is what they basically call, right? A straight line that disseminates the light from the residue to past the Simsun, past this whole thing. Now we could kind of get an idea, like when Hashem puts the baby in the mother's womb and there's an umbilical cord, we could kind of get an idea of what's being said, right? I mean, like everything that we see physically is expressing the physical world. So this idea of the physical world is an expression, right? So everything that we see when we learn these concepts, we should look at Earth and everything around us and see how God is teaching us that Torah, right? So we can understand this idea of the endless world, now subjugating itself in limitation. Well, we can understand that from the man having, millions of sperm, but one creates a baby, right? Type of a thing, right? In an egg, right? And so, or we could learn it when the baby's actually in the mother's womb, right? And the baby's connected to his umbilical cord. What is God trying to teach us by creating it that way? Oh, it's just random. It's just human nature. I don't know. It just happened, random. This is what they want us to believe. The world that does not understand the neshama, they will tell us that everything is random, and they'll create some scientific equation to give us some language that we don't understand and say this is why this is the way it is. And we're like, oh, okay. They said it. And I'm not doing that voice, but I'm saying this is for humanity, right? I did kind of like, whatever. It's like a Southern voice, whatever. But the point is just saying that that mindset is what all of humanity, they're sitting there listening to people teach them about a false reality. Like they creating mathematical scales and scientific theories and philosophies with not even acknowledging the soul. The whole thing's false. Psychology, all these things. You don't deal with the neshama, you don't acknowledge it, your science is false, even though everybody agrees with it. And the only reason why they get people to participate in it, because they say because of the pleasure. So they create this pleasure mechanism. Okay, so just read this. So it says, so I'm saying the more pleasure you receive, the more you perceive you're successful, right? It's like Hansel and Gretel. They just keep feeding you. You accept it. Okay, it says, even so, Alpha P, all that is rooted there cannot come into being without the unlimited himself governing it. This is the cuff, right? This is saying that don't think the Simpson is in a separate reality, even though it's an expression of the same light in a different way. Everything's coming from the boss. For there are entities whose movements are self-generated and others whose movements depend upon others. For example, the movement of the body depends of another, while the movement of the soul are self-generated. All of this must have a root above. If so, among the lights there must be some whose movements are self-generated, and they are their roots, and they are the roots of those entities having this property. While different lights whose movements depend on other lights are the root of those entities that have property. Okay, so he's showing us there's a relationship between lights. Some lights are independent on their own, and then some lights are a byproduct of a particular light being rooted, right? He used the example of the body and the soul. The body is a light, is expression of a light, but is a byproduct of the soul. Meaning that if there's no soul in the body is just a garment that falls in the ground. Okay. How I was just talking about it, I can't say it. It says Rishmo. How Rishmo who Shoresh Leguf. Vechalakti le neshama. So he says the residue of the body, the residue is the body the residue is the root of the body, while the unlimited is the root of the soul. So that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's what we said, but it's saying it even more clear. The unlimited is self-governing, while the movement of the residue is through the unlimited. So he's showing a relationship with the soul, the body. So we have a mechanism to analyze all of creation, right? This is what is implied by the words without unlimited himself governing it. This means that while the residue contains all the laws and principles by which the lower realms and beings are governed, the source of this government is not there, but in the unlimited. Everything in the residue is under his control, like an axe in the hand of the hewer. So again, he's making that umbilical cord connection between the lights of the residue of the Simsun to the process of the Simsun to the endless the world of divine names or divine letters and all the way back to the endless world. Reshit Yedidot Yitzha'od Mina Kam Kama Hazet. Okay. So he says two collaborate. He says there's two. What is this? Calicories, corollaries. Corollaries emerge from this. The first that works with the residue exists only through the unlimited. The second is that the unlimited that governs the residue. The word governs implies that there are movement. If the unlimited did no more than set the residue in motion, he could only say that it could not exist except through the unlimited. But we're saying that he governs it, that he is actually governs the order which applies in the residue itself. Let us explain two types of corollaries more, these two corollaries more clearly. Okay. So he's saying like he's trying to understand this idea of governance, right? It's not that just one evolves from the other. It says she'ina mitziot le ma'aseh ha rishmo al yedei hachalakti veze ki alaf pi. He said the first work of the residue exists only through the unlimited. This means that even though what the Ein Sof brings about is as far as the lower realms, the creatures are concerned. Within limits, this does not mean that he executes what he does in a limited manner, like a human being. The way in which he acts is beyond our ability to grasp because he acts without limits. However, his will decreed that even though he continues acting in this way, we receive only what reaches us. So even though the creator is involved and he's pushing the whole thing, it's still showing this dissemination process, right? Which is he continues acting in this way. We receive only what reaches us, which is within limits. It is therefore true that the results of his actions are within limits, but not his actual performance of the action. For the lower creatures can receive only what they are ready and able to receive. This is that system that Rav Ashlag was teaching us, the rock, plant, animal, human. Accordingly, in all of our discussions, we are speaking only about the results of his actions, with are within the bounds and limits. So the manifestation of the light. We don't understand, again, I spoke about this earlier. I don't know why things manifest, but I do accept that they did manifest, and I have to respond according to God's will. But the way in which the Ein Sof actually executes that action is far beyond us. We cannot understand that. We should not even inquire into it, for the boundaries of our knowledge include only what is done, what's manifested, and what it means, and how it's done. We do not know. So how these things manifest, we have a structure. How, why, the whole thing. We have enough. דרג מסל נדע שיש ספירות המצוות נשתשות מאורות ועלה אין אסר להעלם. Okay, so he says, for example, we know that the contracted spheroids are made from this high, but how? He acted to conceal and contract his lights we cannot say. This is not the case from the Simsun and downwards. We can say this for we can specifically the different parts of the Parsufim according to when they all hold sway, how their desired effects are produced and what happens to them when they produce new effects. This is not the case of the Ein Sof, to whom we cannot attribute different parts because it's all light or anything of the kind. Accordingly, it is impossible to say how he acted or these spheroids radiate from him now in the way he acted without limits. So that's interesting. So he's saying that even though I'm talking about the process of the letters and how things manifest, it's still saying that the reason why tree exists, the reason why cow exists, the reason why grass exists, the reason why molecule exists, we don't know. We don't know why these were the building blocks. We don't know why this is the combination. We know this is that in the same way by the spheroids, right? We don't know why he created this order, the structure, these radiants, this whole thing, but we in our mind it makes sense, right? He says, Uvia lach re'ia shaderek hafiloa bakol hafilot. He says, Sarika shahia belavtida mo'agel. He says, mo'gavel. Okay, what's it? So he says, let me prove to you that all the way in which he must act without limits. For the insof, so he's going to prove something to us right now. For the insof by necessarily cannot be changed to act at one time in one way and another time in another way that could be changed. So the Ein Sof is just pure light. It doesn't have the differentiation system that we see here. So even though we're explaining the lights and the letters and that, they're not separate. Even though they have this process that these lights were designated to be in the Simsun and be put to this constricted expression, nevertheless, in that reality of the Ein Sof, they're all connected. He says to act one way or another. So he says, so if the Ein Sof, blessed be he, did not act at one time in one way and another time in a different way, we are obliged to say that the way in which the Ein Sof acts is the same, and the very acts which come to us within limits is executed by him in his way without limits, while we receive what relates to us. That there can be no difference in the way the Ein Sof acts is obvious, for we cannot in any way ascribe physical occurrence to the Ein Sof. And the change is certainly a physical occurrence, which therefore cannot exist. It is quite clear from the words of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He says he does not change in any place. So he says two things. In some we have two things: the result of the Ein Sof's action, B, his execution of that action. It is the result that reach us, and these are within limits. However, the way in which he executes the action is concealed from us, and this is without limits. The limited results of his work is the residue, but the work but the work but the limitation results of his work is a residue, but the work has to be executed, and his execution of it is without limits. For the performance by the Ein Sof, blessed be he who acts without limits. Thus we see that it is rooted in the residue existence only through the unlimited. But If the execution of the action is also within limits, the residue has also has a function in itself without the need of unlimitedness. So they're saying, so even though the residue is connected to the endless world and it receives its light, it still has a function unique to itself, which is limitation. Okay. I want to stop here because then if we don't, because it's still part two. We did part one. So we stop here is 15. Yeah, we gotta stop here because we're gonna be here for another hour. And I know people got things to do. Okay, any thoughts, reflections, any feedback, thoughts?
Baruch Hashem. Yeah, it was, what the takeaway that I'm getting from this class, in the last class that you did, I wasn't able to be there, but you mentioned the idea of like the puppet, and we don't have the ability. It's not even really, we're not even responsible for identifying understanding every single line or every single occurrence. However, the biggest takeaway that we got, especially from this sukkah, was the aspect of everything that we do. If we have the proper mindset and the proper intentions, in that we stop and we just examine, what we're doing and why we're doing it. That the ultimate goal is to get close to Hashem, and in doing so, we started analyzing, and for myself, and something our coach Nell mentioned earlier. Looking back over my life, why did all of these particular things have to transpire? Why was I born in this particular environment? And why? And so the idea is that even from me not consciously being aware of the guidance, the guidance and the instructions from the Simpson, or from the Ein Sof, and understanding, not understanding nothing. I mean from being a child, I look back over it and I can see how things were orchestrated. They were orchestrated, not understanding, all the significant details to it, and maybe never will. But I can see that things were orchestrated to get me where I'm at today. And the true takeaway is that I can't look at, um, you know, well, I went through all of that to have the wife that I have, or the children that I have, or the career field that I have, or the business that I have, right? But that that everything was being orchestrated with the mindset and the intelligence outside of myself to lead me to a place that I get a deeper reality that I need to intentionally desire to get close to Hashem. And we may say that statement is simple, but it's not. When we consider how everyone grows, and how many just all the events that happen in life. We always used to think to ourselves, hey, I want to get close to God. I want to be close to God. I want a deeper relationship with Him, right? But that was always like something that was like on the outside of ourselves. But knowing that it was always His intentions, that you get to that place to understand the true meaning of what it means to be close to Him, and to do the things that cause you to be close to Him. And that's these lessons. This is what I'm getting out of this. This sounds like, this is Ram Cole's whole uh, mindset, and it's very powerful. Toda.
Yeah, I think that's the main point right there is to see how holy our lives have been, right? And that's what the system in its limitation. I'm not like, oh, I'm against the system. I mean, it's supposed to be that way. The only way you could sometimes get to truth is through illusion, right? And so that point, um, on that point, that's the idea is that we have to see our lives as living in the Garden of Eden. We can't, look at our lives and say, oh, well, this, because that, oh, you're in the ghetto. Like, I think that's the gift of being called black. It's like they just straight up called you. They just like, hey, man, y'all black. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like we could, we did, because the nature of us, our spirit, we took that and was like, okay, if that's what you want to call, if that's what you want to call me, fine. But the reality of the situation is that no one has ability to define me. You know what I'm saying? Like no one could come and tell me what I am other than Hashem. And it's like giving away that power to the dark side, right? The dark side wants to come and say, you know what? Um, this is who you are and accept that. No, it's not that's not reality. You know what I mean? And we've all been blessed. We've all had blessed lives. And the only struggle we've had is that we've given that power away to other people. And it happens at such a young age. We don't even realize it. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the part that we got to work through in life is to see that our lives are blessed and there's no mechanism of gauging who we are or who we not other than our connection to God, and to see how God has redeemed us, how God has rescued us over and over again, and returning back